Anyway, but today's show we're going to talk about the rapture, or the end times, the end of the world, and how a lot of Christians, a surprising number of them, view what's going to happen, and how that affects us in the United States. It turns out, you kind of take a first glance at some of this stuff, and it's rather kind of scary and kind of creepy and kind of goofy, and you wonder whether anybody takes this seriously. And apparently, a lot of people do, and I think that's one of the kind of lessons out of the show today is that we sort of have to take this seriously, even though it's junk, in my opinion. Yeah, so much nonsense, because a lot of people believe it, and a lot of those people are in effect dealing with it. So we have this rapture thing, right? So this is effectively about Christ's return, right? The return of Christ, and this was prophesied in the Bible, in Revelations and other places, and I guess I want to start out by saying that Christ said he'd come back, but he said he'd come back real soon. And, real soon...
that was 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, behold, I come quickly, that sort of thing. And so, a lot of the people that believe this are biblical literalists. So they take every word quite seriously, but they're happy to kind of skip over this part or gloss over it or whatever. And so we have... Jesus is probably promising to come back real soon. He doesn't, so I consider that a false prophecy, or something to...
well, those time frames off, if nothing else.
Right, so. Right. There's another related prophecy that's worth mentioning too, and that is God giving the covenant with Abraham, giving the lands of Israel, yes. which at that time encompassed a lot of the Middle East, to the Israelites, in effect, that wasn't upheld because they all disbanded and left there, went their separate ways or whatever. And this plays heavily into this whole thing too. So we have the Old Testament Abraham story, and the New Testament Jesus returning, and both of these kind of flow into this rapture idea. So we have in the rapture, there's a lot of related ideas here, and I'm going to try to explain it as best I understand it. We have this notion of dispensationalism, which is a belief that the Bible can be broken up into 7 different ages, and we're living in the 7th age, and the end of that age will be punctuated by Jesus returning. Okay. It's also called... there's a lot of debate about the details of that. You also hear the term millennialism, which refers to the 7th age that Jesus is supposed to return. So these ideas were kind of born in the early 19th or late 19th century by a guy named John Darby, and became fairly popular in the early 1900s in the Scofield Reference Bible. Cyrus Scofield kind of made this popular. In the 70s, we saw Hal Lindsey's The Late Great Planet Earth that really brought this out and kind of tried to relate it to a lot of the politics that was going on at the time. At that point, I think they equated Satan with the Russians, because the Cold War was still kind of very much in effect there. And now more recently we have Tim LaHaye and Jerry Jenkins with their Left Behind series, promoting it yet again, and really bringing it into the popular culture. So that's this dispensationalism. There's another related idea that's called Christian Zionism, which is basically, Zionism is the idea that the Jews should have a homeland, which is not horribly controversial, but the Christians' approach to it is that the Jews should have a homeland because the Bible says that the Jews have this, we're given this land by the covenant.
It was prophesied on the Bible, therefore it's going to happen.
Right. So. And you see these guys promoting this, and it's turned into a very strong movement in the United States, where we have these Christian Zionists influencing our policy with Israel, and basically Israel is sort of untouched. We send a lot of money there. We help them in a lot of ways. And any discussion against that idea is that it is turned into it's called anti-Semitism. You know, that if you don't buy into this idea, you are basically one step away from a Nazi or whatever. So that's going. There's also a strong part of Christian Zionism, a strong movement to convert Jews to Christianity, because although it's their homeland and all that, and a necessary step to rapture, which we'll talk about in a little bit, they have to be converted to Christianity. Otherwise, they're going to just burn before Jesus comes, because it's all about Jesus, and anybody who's not converted is not in the picture, doomed, absolutely. A third idea is called dominionism, which I know a little bit less about, but it's the idea that Christians should seize the world and manifest God's power before the world, and the idea that Christians should take over the world and influence the world. And a lot of these people think that this plays into this Christian nation myth, which I've talked about in a previous show, that that's the United States' responsibility to go and sort of spread the gospel and conquer if necessary.
Now, the way you word it there almost sounds like use force if necessary.
Absolutely.
Show them the power of the Lord.
That's right.
Via nuclear bombs.
Yeah, our power, our arms, our arsenals are in effect God's power.
The finger of God.
Yeah. So we have a lot of sort of creepy ideas. You can kind of start to see how this is shaping up and potentially influencing things. Now let's talk a little bit about the rapture itself. There's sort of two main things that are very important. One is this notion of the rapture, where and a lot of people sort of visualize it as Christians or people who believe in Jesus and very, very strongly believe it will be whisked up to heaven. And you have the notion of maybe floating nude bodies going up because their clothes stay, their false teeth stay, their prosthetic limbs, anything artificial.
By Left Behind.
Right. Contact lenses all stay back. And you definitely see this in the Left Behind series, although it's got a G rating in the sense that you don't see any nude bodies, you don't hear anything about nudity, right? It all happens overnight and nobody's quite aware of.
We actually, just a little side note here, a year or two back we had an ACA party where we all got together and we watched the first movie. I think there's only one movie.
That's right.
Or are there multiple movies now?
There's just one movie, I'm sorry. Okay. There's lots and lots of books.
There's like 10 of them or something like that. But yeah, the first book is actually made into a movie, and we all sat around and watched that, and basically how they showed it happen was just everybody's on a plane, and then somebody wakes up from their nap on the plane, look over, and they just see this shirt and a pair of pants and a pair of glasses sitting on the seat next to them, and it turns out like over half the plane it's just these little piles of clothes in the seats.
Right. Yeah, and that shows up in the books as well.
Yeah.
And although the movie didn't get a whole lot of popular acclaim or whatever, don't discount that. I mean, these books are very, very popular.
The books are doing well.
The books are doing well. They've sold 50 million copies of the books if you add them all up, which is a huge number. And they've also have a series for children, so there's a Left Behind for kids, which is I read one of those books, and it's definitely brainwashing.
Wow.
If I say so. So this rapture idea, coming from an atheist perspective, it's pretty laughable, right? I mean, what use does heaven have for warm bodies, right?
Yeah.
Where Are they going to make them into Soylent Green, or and feed them to somebody, or are they going to separate the souls from the body and plug the bodies into some sort of matrix thing and draw energy source from them? Or I don't know, right? I mean, I always thought that heaven was kind of supernatural, and the material world had nothing to do with it, right?
Yeah.
So. Who knows? So you can make a lot of fun of it. In fact, there's this rather funny parody. We've seen a lot of parodies, right?
Don't know if you wanted to get into the story, but
yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
This is actually a story that originated in August of 2001, and it came out on Religion in the News, which is a site that collects articles, but they say on the site that some of these stories are really true. See if you can figure out which ones they are. So they're not claiming to be the CNN of the religion or anything like that. Some of the stuff is just plain false. This is one of those stories, but apparently lots and lots of people got hooked into it because I got this off of Snopes, Snopes.com, which is one of these debunking type sites. But anyway, the article...
Urban legends and all that.
Exactly, urban legend sites. I'll just read a couple snippets of the article here. A Little Rock woman was killed yesterday after leaping through her moving car's sunroof during an incident best described as a mistaken rapture by dozens of eyewitnesses. The woman, who was apparently convinced that the rapture was occurring when she saw 12 people floating up in the air and then passed a man on the side of the road who she claimed was Jesus. She started screaming, he's back," and climbed right out of the sunroof and jumped off the roof of the car, said Everett Williams, husband of 28-year-old Georgianne Williams. Madison, apparently one of the policemen or something like that, questioned the man who looked like Jesus and discovered that he was dressed up as Jesus and was on his way to a toga party. When the tarp covering the bed of his pickup truck came loose and released 12 blow-up sex dolls filled with helium, which floated up into the air. So apparently this woman saw somebody looking like Jesus who was going to a toga party, release a whole bunch of sex dolls, which then floated up in the air, and he's screaming at them, "Come back, come back!" She thought it's a rapture. She jumped out of her car. Like I say, this is complete fabrication. This did not happen.
But it's so juicy. We love it. We just... And you read this stuff and you just think that this could happen.
Yeah.
This could happen.
With some of the news stories that we have had on this show, this isn't all that far-fetched.
That's right. That's right. So that's why I think that's been so successful, and they've had to debunk it.
Yeah.
If it were more off the wall, they'd blow it off. Anyway, so you may have seen around town or whatever, seen bumper stickers that say, "In case of rapture, this car will be unmanned."
Yeah. Thankfully, you don't see those on planes, though.
Yeah, yeah. Or bumper stickers that say, "Today could be the day," meaning referring to the rapture might happen. Yeah. And, this kind of gets into a little bit of a dark side of this, in that, if you really believe that your car is going to go careening down the road when you disappearing and potentially kill somebody, it basically shows that you don't give a shit about that person, right? You're not taking responsibility.
Well, those are people who apparently are evil and sinful and did not earn their spot in heaven. And so,
Right. They're trash. Screw them.
Yeah.
They're not. So we have this rapture thing, and it's kind of funny in some ways. We have our own little retort to that down here on our little. We have a little bumper sticker that says, "Rapture is a world without religious nuts," which is kind of a little pun that basically says, good riddance. If you believe this stuff, we're not interested in having that. Unfortunately, with the rapture, we don't have religion disappearing with the people who are the big believers. We have this other phase of the rapture, which is called tribulation, and there's an ongoing debate about whether one occurs before or in between or after, or whatever. Rapture is kind of an event. Tribulation is kind of a long period where a number of events that beckon or that have to happen before Jesus is to return. It's kind of a script in a way. And the tribulation has the state of Israel being established and them capturing a lot of the old biblical lands, which includes parts of Syria, quite a bit of the Middle East, it turns out. We have a rebuilding of the third temple at the Dome of the Rock and all Aqsa mosques.
Okay.
So we're going to have to tear down these mosques that, of course, the Muslims consider Jerusalem one of the Holy Lands as well, so they'll get kicked out, and the temple rebuilt.
From everything I had seen, the rapture was always supposed to happen before the tribulation, because I was eventually...
That's basically what happens in this, and this is called, I think, it's either premillennialism or postmillennialism. I can't remember which.
Okay.
But there's a little bit of a debate about that. And
okay, because I was under the impression that the tribulation was going to be a bad time on Earth. Lots of wars, lots of bad things happening.
Right.
So the rapture was essentially saving these people from that.
That's right. That's right. And so the next step in the tribulation is that the legions of Antichrist. Antichrist is supposed to rise, and he will have these vast armies, and they'll be deployed against Israel, and there'll be this huge world war, during which Jews will either convert to Christianity or be killed and burn. burn in hell, and then Jesus comes back, and all is wonderful again. And everybody who believed in him goes to heaven, including the people, I believe, that had been killed all along. They'll be reassembled, rematerialized, and anyway, so. And as I said, there's some dispute about the order, but we sort of have this script, and we have a lot of people very fascinated about how world events kind of map onto this script, right? And we, the fact that we have the nation of Israel, or nation of Israel with the people reassembling there was basically a big event in this scenario, right? And we have them grabbing more and more land, and that's part of the scenario as well. And it's part of this. Let's see, Iraq is Babylon is associated with Iraq has Babylon, which is considered where the Antichrist is supposed to come from. And so in the current versions of this, there's been lots of different variations of this. In the current one, we have Saddam Hussein being the Antichrist. Of course, he's in jail somewhere and not very powerful, so maybe it's not him. Maybe it's somebody else. Could be.
Well, he has yet to come to real power and break out and take over the world.
And I guess the Antichrist is supposed to be reborn or whatever as well, just like Jesus was. Israel is seen as kind of a portal or a key to this whole scenario. Jesus is supposed to return there. The people are supposed to rapture wherever. Apparently, a lot of Israelites or Israelis are supposed to be killed during this. In fact, so many there's supposed to be a big sea of blood created. And so the music has to do with my visualizing this is Americans surfing into Israel on this sea of blood, which is not a very pleasant sort of image. Yeah,
you're not picking.
And if this doesn't creep you out, something is really wrong with you. Go get therapy, okay?
Don, you're not picking the music anymore for this show.
So this begs the question, do we want this to happen, or do we want to prevent this from happening? Right? Are we trying to make this script go on? Are we feeding the fires of this so that we make Jesus come back? I mean, what could be better than going to heaven? I mean, heaven is eternal bliss.
Yes.
Bringing Jesus back, that's like eternal orgasm or something. I don't know what it is. It's just so damn wonderful that it's worth destroying the world for. Apparently.
Well, from my understanding, again, if you believe this nonsense, this is going to happen. This was prophesied in the Bible. This will happen.
Right.
Now, we may be able to affect the time frame, but even that would be highly unlikely. God's got a plan. That plan is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't affect it. So this is going to happen, according to these strange people.
Right.
Who believe this nonsense.
Yeah, some people think that Jesus is going to descend from the clouds at the end, and that kind of gets into the surfing theme too. We have these guys surfing with their surfboards up as they're doing the parasailing and all that, or jumping down I don't know. So we can sit and laugh at it, and you can kind of say why it's stupid. I mean, I really think that this is the epitome of what's bad about religion. We have the application. We have people digging through the Bible and creating nonsense. We have this live and let die sort of attitude. Screw you if you're not a believer. Holy war is a part of God's plan, and it really plays on people's fears and sense of powerlessness. People in times of war, in times of chaos, people feel very unsettled, and this sort of plays into those fears and encourages them to believe in the Bible, believe in these prophecies and all this bunk, and they sort of give up, if you will, on reality, give up on trying to make things better, and I think that this is just really awful. And
it's a defeatist attitude.
Yeah. So we've sort of said why it's not a good thing, right?
Okay.
But it's easy to say, well, these are just a bunch of wackos off in the corner believing this stuff. But that's really not the case. This is a big business. We've mentioned the fact that
Okay, so it's a big bunch of wackos off of it.
Yeah, it's a big bunch of wackos. So let's talk about numbers. Let's see. We have in one poll we have 46% of people in the United States claiming to be evangelical, and 71 of those claiming to believe in this notion of Armageddon and it playing out more or less in the Bible. And so if you multiply those two numbers, you end up with 32% of the people that buy into this in the United States, which is a huge number, right? I have one
third of the people in the country.
1/3 of the yes.
Wow.
Another estimate says that 59% believe in Revelation playing out eventually, and 17% think that it will happen in their lifetime. So we have 17% of the people in the United States giving up on the world, which is pretty sad.
Wow.
So another statistic is that claims that 15% of the voters in this next election will likely decide based on the Mideast policy in Israel, because that's such an important thing in this. Alone, that would be their sole issue, basically because they believe that once they turn on this rapture faucet or whatever, that's it. That's the most important thing in their life, to be saved.
Wow.
Right? So that's pretty creepy stuff, right? Certainly, our public officials, Bush, Ashcroft, DeLay, Rumsfeld, Cheney, all these guys buy into this to one degree or another. LaHaye himself is very, very influential. He helped start the moral majority. He and his wife more or less killed the Equal Rights Amendment. They were very big in getting that killed back in the 70s.
Okay.
They helped start this group called the Council for National Policy, which is this big secret organization of billionaires that whose membership is not quite known, but they influence a lot. A lot of money flows through them to other groups. We have Bush clearly influenced by Christian Zionists. We have him doing an about-face on foreign policy, where he was trying at one point to go for peace in exchange for land, and when the Christian Zionists spoke up, that whole thing was reversed. It's unacceptable to give land away. Tom DeLay, which is one of the most powerful congressmen, has a plaque in his office that says, "This could be the day." And I say that speaks volumes. You know, he buys into this, right? So what effect does it have? Well, if the world's going to end in 30 years, screw the environment. Why waste any time at all on the environment?
Yeah.
Right. So this notion of stewardship of the world that a lot of Christians claim to believe in is all pitched by this whole idea. Who cares? This notion of working together across nations in the United Nations is basically killed by this idea, so that because there's this notion that as part of the tribulation there'll be Antichrist rising and there'll be one world government, right? And people associated that with the UN, and so and that might explain. It might have something to explain with why we have sort of pulled out of the UN, snubbed our noses at them. Then what I'm going to do is I'll go into one more little thrust here and talk about the Middle East and Israel, which is the third main thing of the effect of this, and then we'll take some callers. So if people want to call in and get in the queue, that'd be great, because we need to screen our callers. And so in the Middle East, as we said, this whole Israel prophecy that was false, of course. People think it's coming true with the nation of Israel. We see this very odd thing going on. We have Israel that a lot of the conservative Jews believe that yes, they are the chosen people, and yes, this is their land, and they're not very popular in that region because they've displaced a lot of Arabs from what would otherwise be their holy land. So they're not very popular, and they kind of feel like the world's kind of against them. So they're happy to take help from anywhere anywhere they can, and they get a lot of help from the United States in the form of this Christian Zionism. Okay. And the Christian Zionists are sort of helping them in a lot of ways, in very practical ways, sending a lot of money. The U.S. foreign policy is very much influenced by this. But it's a rather creepy thing, because the Christians think that, oh, well, this is the key to our salvation, and you're just a stepping stone. We're gonna step all over you when the time comes. A few of you will be saved, but the rest of you, if you don't convert, screw you. And so we have this sort of odd mix of those two, and then we have the Muslims in the Middle East being displaced from their holy land. And by the way, I think the Quran has a similar end of the world myth as well, but it doesn't involve Christians. They're not part of that picture. They're not. Anyway, so that's pretty goofy. So I think that with this lens, you can start to see a little bit of U.S. foreign policy, and especially what's going on in the Middle East, and it starts to make a lot more sense given this perspective. And I'd say that I have to say this: public policy based on fantasy, war, destruction is bad. Okay. That's the atheist perspective here.
We're going to go out on a limb here. We're going to go out on a limb here.
Fantasy, destruction of the earth. These are bad things. Okay. We should, as a nation, we should be very much aware that our foreign policy is being influenced by these things, and you actually have to look for it in the news right now. It's not front page news, and it should be, because
Yeah. If they can make proof positive studies of things that are real and base policy on that, then I'm all for it. This is purely fantasy. It's purely brainwashing and just wishful thinking and such.
Right, mass delusion, no concern for the effects, no sense of responsibility.
Exactly.
I mean, if you want to kill yourself to go to Jesus, knock yourself out, but leave the rest of the world out of it.
Exactly.